and then what happens is you end up with a finer worm castings. Look at my compost. This is a finished compost, and this is a compost that I love to use for my worms. So this is the traditional tiered worm farm, so that people can actually see that
we got night crawlers and red wigglers in here, don't we? G'day my friends, Marty Ware here from Marty's Garden, and have I got some old classic gold for you guys today. Yep, the worm farming video that kicked me off into the stratosphere for bringing out content based on compost worms and understanding how they become so vital as a part of organic gardening and permaculture. Now my great friend Peter, Permy Pete, I didn't know him very well before then, but I love the guy and his family just so much now, and we are just wonderful friends, even though we don't get to see each other much anymore because we're just so far away. But this guy is jam-packed full of knowledge about worm farming and permaculture and self-sufficient living. Him and his wife live an amazing life in the hinterland up behind Port Macquarie, and he's got so much to share. So I wanted to share this video with you again. I got to cut a couple little parts out with some music so I don't get, you know, they ban things and everything when you have some stuff with music. But anyway, here it is, the Marty's Garden, the original video, pure gold, and you're going to learn a ton of stuff in here. Enjoy, and I'll see you at the end of the video. Pete, why use wood chip compost as worm bedding?
Okay, we're going to have a look at my compost. This is a finished compost, and this is a compost that I love to use for my worms, particularly when I'm ready for the worms to lay some eggs. So what's so good about this compost? Well, the first thing is it's a hard carbon wood chip compost, meaning that there's just a lot of wood chip which I collect from the local area. Now there's a few different places that you can get your hands on this. Some places you can get it for free, some places you can buy it by the truckload. Either way, it contains a lot of native material such as lily pillies and acacia. So the worms love this stuff because it adds bulk, it adds air through your garden, so the worms can get in there and they can lay eggs, and it allows all sorts of different habitat for other organisms and microbiology that thrive in your garden. The worms like this because it offers a very natural environment and it allows the native worms to come up through it. It contains lots of leaf, it contains lots of bark, and these are all the good things on a forest floor that the worms love to eat, and we're basically just trying to replicate that. So this material takes about 4 weeks to get to this stage, and then the worms will eat it for another 2 weeks. So between around about 6 to 8 weeks you can get a finished compost into your garden ready to go, and the worms will be able to take your garden to the next level.
Pete, why do we use water in our worm farms?
Why do we want to put water in our worm farms? There's a couple of reasons. The first one is to make sure that we deter the other creatures that we don't want living in there, such as cockroaches and ants. Now, they don't like moist conditions, but the worms do. So there's the added extra benefit of taking the liquid and being able to use it through our garden. So I simply just recycle the water coming out of the bottom, only to 2 or 3 times, and that's just to increase the strength of the wormweed that we're making. So you just basically pour it into the top, make sure that the whole surface is covered, and then that keeps the material nice and wet and nothing else wants to live in it.
So can we have a look inside the worm farm and just to get a bit more of an example of what we should be doing, and
Certainly.
what sort of, just watch the light there just went out, but that's cool.
I'd love to show you inside. So this is the material. Now there's a few little tricks that you can learn.
This is the material that we just looked at, is it?
It is. So this is the finished compost from the compost piles, and this was really just to trigger the response in the reproduction of the worms. So we want the worms to lay lots of eggs. I use this bit of old damp smelly cloth to keep the moisture in and allow the evaporation cycle to happen, cooling the worms. If I squeeze the material, you want to be able to see droplets of water around your hand. Now there's a fair bit of wood chip in this, so I can't actually get a good squeeze on it, but we'll be able to find some more material soon and you'll be able to see how much moisture we're actually looking for.
So when we add water to the bin to collect the leachates and obviously to keep the worms more moist, how often should we do it?
You're looking at a minimum of once a week. Now during summer you'd probably be looking at a couple of times during that week. Now we're looking at probably anywhere from 1 litre to 5 litres, depending on if you're actually using the liquid through your garden or if you're just trying to keep the worm farm wet.
Hey, let's talk food levels and more tips. So what do we got here, Peter?
So this is just my worm cafe. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I tend to show people a few different ways on how to use these. So this is the traditional tiered worm farm, so that people can actually see that
we've got night crawlers and red wigglers in here, don't we?
Yes, that's right. So I run a mix of all 4 worms. I do the African night crawlers, the Indian blues, the reds and the tigers, and I find that it covers for the different times of year. So for summer you've got your blue worms that really dominate, and then when it's too cool for them in the winter you've got your reds and your tigers which come through. So awesome. It's a perfect mix all year round. And
we're going to the bottom layers here, aren't we?
Yep, so as the worms move down you'll find that the food's eaten and eaten more and more, but what I've been teaching people is you do have the ability to feed the worms on every single level.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. I was always feeding just top level.
No, well that's
I noticed they did eat at the bottom level, so but
yep, so as you can see as
that's pretty cool.
Yep, and then here's a night crawler here. So you can see that the night crawlers are a lot bigger worm. If you come out of there, buddy, there we go.
Come on, mate.
So that's
I'm not going to feed you to the yabbies.
Yep, so you can still see that they're active and it's pretty cold here.
Yeah.
That's a tropical worm.
Yeah, right.
And then so this is the real secret that I really try and help people out with, is that this is the bottom reservoir. Now this is
where I normally have the tank flowing out.
This is where you normally catch your liquids.
You're going to show me up here, mate. I've made a big mistake then, have I?
No,
I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn. Right, show me.
Just another way of doing it. And for me, it's about having a safety zone, particularly in summer when the conditions can get too hot. When you're feeding the worms are going to go somewhere and they tend to go down. Unfortunately for a lot of people, they've got their tap shut, and when the worms go down they struggle and they end up dying in the liquid. Now there are
I've had that happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now there's a few things in here like these stages or the lugs, the platforms that the worms can climb out, but I do find that when it's full of liquid it tends to end up sending the farm a little bit smelly. So there is a very important thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing this method, and that is you've got to keep the tank or the tap open. So having it raised and having a bucket to capture the leachate is still exactly the same as capturing the leachate in the bottom.
Right. What I've been teaching and what I do is I have my tap open the whole time, and about 2 or 3 times a week I throw a whole big bucket full. Yep. Just catch it, let it drip through. I throw about 2/3 of it out on the garden and I pour the other bit through to keep the microbes and everything happy with the leachate coming through. Is that right?
And that works, Marty. That works really well. So the big difference that I would then offer, or the suggestion I would offer, is to fill the bottom just with a couple of inches of pea straw or loosen mulch or something that is going to allow the worms to be able to go up and down. So as all that liquid comes down, it permeates through, and then what happens is you end up with a finer worm castings. So you end up with all the silt which comes from the top above.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
You can see that the worms are still thriving in here because they've got the right cover. The moisture is still freely draining, and I don't normally feed this section, but because it's winter and it's cold, I can feed quite happily without knowing that the worms are going to get too hot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's really a completely different castings because it's more of the sediment that comes down into this bottom reservoir.
So what do you think of that, eh? that really was pure gold, and some of the tips in there are just absolutely brilliant and still so relevant to this day. I wish that I lived closer to Permy Pete and his family so we could get there more often and shoot more videos and just hang out with my good mate. But unfortunately we just get to speak on the phone from time to time, and who knows, if they get an office with some video stuff going on, we may get them live on the show in the future. But no promises there. But look, let me know what you thought about that video. It was shot on an old G7 a long time ago, and I really enjoyed piecing it all together, and I know my good friend Pete loved it too. Anyway, I'll see you at the next video real soon. Drop a comment down below, say good day, and happy gardening, worm farming. Bye for now.